In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars formed rivers of light and planets circled in harmony, there was a shared belief held by every intelligent species that roamed the stars. That belief was simple. Only one Deathworld existed. Its name was Carnes. Covered in violent storms and endless volcanic plains, Carnes was home to a reptilian species that fed on acid, slept in fire, and tore through metal like it was paper. No other world could compare. No other life form could match the brutal survival of Carnes. The Galactic Database confirmed it. Every scholar, commander, explorer, and merchant accepted it. One Deathworld. Only one among the countless stars. A small research vessel floated silently through Sector 9 to OB. Its crew, a group of scientists and explorers, had no intention of rewriting history. They were mapping old space lanes. Their ship, called the Vinder, was not built for battle. It carried scanners, labs, and one small shuttle for land surveys. Its crew was tired. Most of them had not seen a living planet in weeks as fate would have it. Their engines failed near a forgotten solar system. The ship drifted. Backup systems activated. A blue and green planet appeared on their screens. It was close, oxygen-rich, gravity within standard range. But there was a problem. The planet was marked as uninhabitable. The system flagged it as Earth. Ancient records called it a failed experiment. High radiation, extreme temperature shifts, violent storms, and unpredictable magnetic fields. According to the Galactic Archive, Earth had no intelligent life. It was classified as dead. They had no choice. With the engines failing and oxygen thinning, the captain gave the order: land the shuttle. Begin temporary camp. Repair what you can. Do not leave the ship alone. Standard protocol. But what none of them knew was that Earth was not dead. It was only sleeping. The shuttle landed near what used to be a massive city. Cracked roads stretched for miles. Towers stood half-buried under vines and dust. Steel skeletons of machines lay silent in the open. Skies above were gray. Rain fell like smoke. The crew stepped out. Their suits hummed. Scanners beeped. No life signs. No transmissions. No artificial heat. The city felt empty. It felt like a graveyard. They split into two groups. One stayed with the shuttle to begin repairs. The other moved forward to scan the ruins. The wind carried strange sounds. Not voices. Not machines, something else. They heard the creak of metal. The shuffle of leaves. The slow cracking of roots pushing through walls. Every structure had signs of fire, impact, or erosion. But the damage looked too recent. One explorer pointed to a small flame in the distance. It flickered and vanished. He said it was nothing. Just a trick of light. As the team moved deeper, they found symbols scratched into walls. Simple drawings. A face. A creature. A shape that looked like a globe. Then something else. Words written in an ancient human script. One scientist translated them. The words said survive, endure, adapt. That was all. No names, no date, just 3 words. The message chilled them more than the Raynone of the team members found a recording device still working. It was buried under rubble. Covered in soil, they played it. A human voice spoke, calm, steady, not afraid. It said, "This is Earth. We do not surrender to nature. We become nature. We do not run from chaos. We shape it. We do not fear extinction. We evolve." The voice faded. Silence returned. The crew stood still. No one spoke. The one holding the recorder asked the others if they still believed this planet was dead. No one answered. Night fell quickly. The city turned cold. The repair team sent a signal. They were missing 2 members. Their equipment was found near the edge of the forest. No blood, no signs of struggle, just silence. The others returned to the shuttle. All eyes watched the tree line. Shadows moved between the trunks. Something was out there. Something that watched without blinking. Then a figure stepped out. Not fast, not slow. A human, wearing layers of rough clothing. No helmet, no fear. The crew raised their arms. The human raised one hand in peace. No weapon, just eyes sharp like blades. The captain asked the translator to speak. The message was simple. "We are explorers. We thought Earth was empty. We mean no harm." The human smiled. Not warm, not cold, just knowing. He spoke in a voice low and clear. "You thought wrong. Earth was never empty. It was just quiet waiting." The crew asked who he was. He answered with one word. "Human." They asked how many were left. He said enough. They asked why Earth was silent for so long. He said silence is safety. They asked what happened to the others. He said some died, some became part of the forest. Some are watching right now. The translator stopped. His hands trembled. The captain asked if they should leave. The human looked up at the stars and replied, "Not yet. You came here without asking. Stay a little longer, see what you missed." The rain stopped. The trees swayed. Somewhere in the distance, a deep growl echoed through the ruins. The crew turned toward the shuttle. The human didn't move. His eyes stayed on them. Not angry, not afraid. Just steady. The captain whispered to his team, "Earth is not what we thought. Earth is not dead." And somewhere deep beneath the ground something began to stir, a system long dormant, a warning once silenced, a signal ready to rise again. The stars watched in silence. The belief was broken. Only one Deathworld existed. Or so they believed. The night grew darker as clouds moved slowly over the stars. Above, the ruins of the forgotten city whispered with the wind, and nothing around them felt still. The crew of the research vessel stood close to their shuttle, unsure of what to do. The human who had stepped from the trees now sat calmly on a broken concrete block. He had not spoken again, but his presence said more than words could. The forest behind him remained quiet, but something about that silence was louder than any sound. The captain ordered a light scan of the area. The data showed the air was clean but filled with strange particles that moved unnaturally, as if reacting to emotions or thoughts. The trees were old yet healthy, grown through steel and stone, like they had claimed the land completely. One of the scientists checked again for any signs of life besides the human. Nothing appeared on the scans. No birds, no insects, no animals. But their ears picked up distant steps, echoing across hollow ground. The crew asked the human again if they could help him or contact others. He shook his head and replied with a short answer, "You are not ready for what lives here." The translator hesitated, but repeated his words clearly to the team. A few members grew nervous and asked to return to orbit, but the engines were still under repair and the shuttle could not lift off yet. The captain chose to stay near the shuttle until morning. A temporary camp was set up and basic shields were activated. Sometime past midnight, two of the crew members who had gone to gather metal fragments did not return. The search team found their scanners and helmets beside a collapsed tunnel. No signs of blood, no broken gear, no footprints. Just a strange burn mark in the ground, shaped like a hand, but not human, not alien either. Something different. Something old. The human stood beside the crew without warning and said softly, "You should not wander too far. This place knows when you are alone." The captain asked who had taken the others. The human replied with a look that held no anger, only memory. "Earth takes what it wants, then returns it changed." They asked what that meant. He said nothing and walked away toward the trees. The crew followed at a distance, careful not to disturb anything. The forest floor was soft, covered in thick moss that felt warm beneath their boots. The deeper they walked, the clearer they saw signs of life. Hidden camps, underground tunnels, vines shaped like tools, and hollow trees that pulsed with energy. Then they reached a clearing. In the center stood a broken ship, not alien, not modern, just old and human. It looked like it had fallen centuries ago, yet parts of it glowed with faint power. Near the ship were strange machines not powered by fuel, but something else. Something living. The human placed his hand on one and it lit up with a low hum. He turned to them and said, "This is what we saved when we disappeared." The crew looked around confused. They asked what happened to Earth. Why did the galaxy believe it was dead? The human sat down on the grass and began to speak. His voice was low, his words clear. He said Earth had once reached the stars with burning hope and fearless minds. Humans had walked among stars, not as guests, but as builders. They had fought wars with those who feared their fire. They had survived diseases created by nature and weapons. Crafted by hands, they had seen the edge of extinction and returned stronger. But power brought enemies. The galaxy saw humans as a threat. Their ability to adapt scared those who ruled from safety, so they united to push humanity back to Earth. They burned records, erased maps, and placed a false story in the archives. Earth did not fall, it chose to sleep. The storms, the radiation, the unstable skies were not natural. They were defenses built by humans to keep others out. They made Earth invisible. They made it dangerous so no one would return, and it worked until now. The crew listened in silence. Some were moved, some were afraid. The captain asked again why the human had not attacked them or warned them to leave. He said, "You came here without weapons. You came because of failure, not conquest. I waited to see what you would do, and now I see you need to understand." 1. Scientist asked if more humans were alive. The human nodded. They are not above ground, not all of them, but they live in the mountains, in the oceans, in the deep cities. We are not many, but we are enough. He stood and pointed to the sky. You thought Carnes was the only Deathworld. You thought those who survived fire and acid were rare. You forgot what true survival looks like. Look around. This planet was never tamed. It was endured. It was shaped by struggle and pain. It made us what we are. Suddenly the ground shook. A low rumble passed through the trees. The machines around the old ship lit up brighter. The human turned to the crew and said, "You have awakened something. This planet remembers." A light appeared above the clearing, not from a ship, but from the clouds. A shape moved behind it, too large to be a bird, too fast to be a drone. The crew raised their scanners, but they showed nothing. Then the human touched one of the trees, and it opened, revealing a staircase beneath the roots. "You need shelter now," he said. "This place will test you before it accepts you." Crew hesitated, but followed. The forest above closed. Slowly, and silence returned. Deep beneath the surface they saw lights, machines, and tunnels made from stone and steel. They had entered a hidden city, not large, not shining, but alive, with walls that breathed and systems that ran without sound. They had entered a part of Earth the galaxy never knew existed, and there, in that moment, they understood something the galaxy had refused to see. Earth was not a forgotten world. It was a sleeping giant, and humans were not lost. They were waiting. The belief had been broken. Earth was not silent. It was only quiet by choice. Tunnels beneath the forest were wide and warm. The walls were shaped by time, not machines, yet every corner held purpose. The crew followed the human in silence. Their light stayed on, but the path ahead needed no help to glow. Soft blue veins pulsed inside the stone, as if the earth itself was alive. The deeper they went, the more they saw signs of forgotten life. Empty rooms with broken furniture, metal doors half buried in roots, old symbols carved into the walls. None of it matched any known culture in the galaxy, but it felt human. In one large chamber they found a map. It showed Earth from long ago, before the fall, before the storms, before the silence. The continents looked different. Lines marked deep cities, hidden bases under oceans, and transport routes through the clouds. The captain touched the surface, and it responded, glowing faintly with energy. The human turned and said, "This was the last map before we vanished. The final record made for us, not for outsiders. You were never meant to find this place." One of the scientists asked why humans chose to disappear instead of fight. The human paused, then walked to a nearby console. His fingers moved across the surface without effort. Lights came on around the chamber. Screens flickered to life, showing recordings from a time long buried. They saw humans standing before alien ambassadors, offering peace warnings and requests for trust. They saw councils turning away. They saw fleets gathering above Earth, not to talk but to strike. The recording showed a war, but not one of victory. It was a slow, quiet battle fought through shadows and silence. The galaxy feared us, the humans said. They feared what we could survive. They feared what we could become if pushed too far, so they buried us with lies. The crew watched as images of great cities burned not from attack, but from within. They saw plagues rise and vanish in weeks. They saw storms stronger than anything nature had created. They saw humans walking through fire and returning with eyes that no longer blinked. Earth was not destroyed, it was reshaped. The disasters were not punishments, they were barriers. The death of the surface gave birth to the layers below. The captain stepped forward and asked, "What are you now? What have you become in this silence?" The human looked up. A survivor, a watcher, a warning. We adapted not just our bodies but our minds. We learned to hear the world, feel its pain, move with its breath. We are not what we were, we are what you made. Using another chamber, they found a small child, not frightened, not curious, just still. Her eyes glowed faintly, her hands moved like wind through grass. The human beside her placed a hand on her shoulder, and she disappeared into the wall as if the stone had accepted her. One of the crew reached out to touch the wall. It was solid, but it pulsed back like a slow heartbeat. The human explained, "The children of this earth are different. Now they were born without fear. They were raised by silence. They speak without words and they see without eyes." The truth settled heavy on the crew. They had believed in one death world. Carnies had teeth. Carnies had rage, but Earth had memory. Earth had patience, and that made it far more dangerous. The scientist who had translated the old message earlier stepped forward and asked about the energy that powered this place. The human smiled and said, "It is not fuel, it is memory. Everything here remembers every tree, every stone, every breath. The world is alive with what we left behind." They moved into another tunnel, deeper than the others. At the end was a massive door covered in markings unknown to any language. The human placed his hand on the center. The door opened without sound, revealing a chamber full of machines tall as buildings and silent as death. "Is where we store the truth," he said. "Not just of Earth, but of what lies beyond." We saw things the galaxy chose to forget. We faced storms in the dark corners of space that broke minds and shattered fleets. We stood against silence and found meaning inside it. Crew stepped inside. Each machine began to show images, planets, unknown creatures, without names, systems never charted. The scientist recorded what he could, but his hands trembled. This knowledge was not meant for now. It was meant for when the stars grew cold. "You still think Carnies is the worst planet?" the human asked. The captain shook his head. "No, Earth is more than a death world. Earth is a warning." The human turned and said, "You will return to your world. You will speak of us. But know this, Earth did not vanish. Earth was hidden by those who feared it. And now it watches." A sudden sound echoed through the tunnels, a long low hum followed by a distant tremor. The lights shifted to red. The human looked toward the ceiling and said, "They know you are here." Who? the captain asked. "The ones who erased us," the human answered. "The ones who fear your return with this truth. They have eyes in the stars. They feel the pulse of old energy. They come not to learn, but to silence again." Crew looked at one another. They had no weapons. They had no army. They had only what they now knew, and that was more dangerous than any gun. The human walked toward a platform and motioned for them to follow. "You came in peace. You must leave in silence. Take what you have seen and use it wisely." The platform began to rise, carrying them slowly toward the surface. The air grew warmer. The tunnel behind them closed like it had never been there. As they reached the forest once more, the human stepped back into the trees without a word. His eyes met the captain one last time. No anger, no fear, just a message unspoken, and then he was gone. The shuttle stood ready, repairs complete, systems green. The crew entered without speaking. Their thoughts were full, their hands still shaking. The engines lifted the vessel, and soon Earth was below them once more. But this time they saw it not as a planet forgotten, but as a secret that had waited. Only one death world existed, or so they had believed. The shuttle moved through the upper layers of Earth's sky as slowly as a drifting cloud below them. The forests stretched like oceans, and the broken cities lay like forgotten bones. The crew remained silent, each one holding questions no device could answer. The captain stared at the fading land and felt a strange weight pressing against his chest. Not fear, not regret, something older, something heavier. Back on the ship, orbiting high above the planet, the remaining team welcomed the return with cautious relief. No one spoke loudly, no one celebrated. The ship had received no transmissions during the time spent below. All channels remained clear, yet something had changed in the silence. Something in the air felt different. Scientists who had recorded the hidden archives placed the files in lockdown mode. No copies, no backups, only a direct channel to the captain. When asked why, he said this knowledge was not safe in the open. It was a truth too sharp for unready minds. The crew gathered in the meeting hall where the captain stood before them, his voice low, his tone steady. He told them Earth was not dead. Earth was never broken. The data they had trusted was a lie created by fear, shaped by those who wanted to forget. He spoke of the machines, the underground city, the child who vanished into the walls. He described the human not as a survivor, but as a guardian. They listened without questions, not because they understood everything, but because something inside them told them. This was not just a discovery, it was a beginning of something larger than they could see. Far beyond the ship, sensors picked up faint activity. Shadows moved in distant orbit, faint energy patterns. No ships, no signals, just movements unnatural and cold. The navigator looked over the data and whispered that something was watching them. The captain ordered all systems to low power mode. Reduce heat, reduce signal, hide if possible. They had seen enough to know Earth was not alone, and they were not the only ones who remembered it. Later that night in the observation deck, the youngest crew member sat alone, watching Earth spin slowly below. Stars flickered above like ancient eyes, and the curve of the planet glowed soft and steady. The human's words echoed in his thoughts. This planet remembers. In the distance, a new signal appeared. It was not loud, it was not coded, it was simple, a pulse repeating 3 times. Then silence, then 3 times again. It matched nothing known to the crew. The scientist ran comparisons through the ship's archives, then through the deep records of forgotten signals, and found one match, a transmission pattern used during the last days of the old Earth Empire. The signal was a warning. Below the surface of Earth, in the tunnels and chambers, machines had begun to awaken. Old systems, long dormant, now moved with purpose. Lights blinked across ancient panels. Gears turned without hands. Voices whispered through empty halls. Not voices of people, but of memories, records, playing themselves without command, messages meant for a time long past, now echoing into the present. In one deep chamber, a face formed in the screen. Not human, not alien, something different, made of light and memory. It spoke in a language lost to all, but one, the language of early Earth, of the days before the stars. It said, this world holds its line. We see the watchers, we hold the key. The fire still lives in orbit. The captain stood near the comms console, watching the signal repeat. He asked the scientist if the signal should be answered. The reply came after a pause. If we answer, we confirm. We remember. If we stay silent, we may buy time but not safety. Captain stared at the stars, then spoke quietly. Open the channel, send a single word. Listening. Signal stopped. Silence returned. The crew waited. No reply came. The tension broke only when the navigator shouted. There was movement far above them, a ripple in space. Not a ship, not a storm, something tearing through the fold, something that should not bite. Scientists checked again and again, and confirmed the signature matched old data from the buried archives, the same energy used by the Galactic Council when they tried to trap Earth long ago. The crew asked what to do. The captain made a decision. Send the records to command, but only the surface. Let them see the ruins, let them hear the voice. Do not send the deep archive, not yet. If they ask for more, we tell them it was lost. Captain then turned to the crew and said, if they choose to come here again, we may not be the only ones watching them next time. The Guardians will not wait in silence. They will not guide. They will not explain. Below on Earth, the human stood in the ruins of an old city, his eyes fixed on the stars above. Around him, other humans appeared from shadows. None wore armor, none carried weapons, but all of them moved with purpose. They had seen the signal, they had felt the watchers, they had heard the words sent. Across the dark listening, the human spoke to the others, in a voice that held no fear, he said. They remember now, they ask questions soon. They will come again, not with curiosity, but with control. They will try to rewrite us once more. Another replied with calm words, let them try, this time we write back, this time we do not fade above the clouds. Storms began to form, not natural, not random. They moved with rhythm, they followed patterns long forgotten by the stars above Earth, was waking slowly with care, but without fear. Ship above remained silent, engines ready, eyes open. The crew had seen more than they were meant to. They had touched a truth hidden from the galaxy for centuries. They now carried a warning, not written, not recorded, only felt deep in the bones of those who walked the halls of the silent ship. Earth was never lost. Earth was waiting, and now the stars would learn what it meant to forget a Deathworld. Ship drifted quietly in orbit above Earth. Its lights dimmed, its engines silent, but within its walls, thoughts moved faster than light. Every member of the crew carried the weight of truth, a truth older than memory, heavier than silence. They knew Earth was no longer just a forgotten world. They knew it had never been just a planet. It was something more. The signal that came from below had ended, but the feeling it left behind remained like smoke after fire. The young crew member who first heard the message sat near the window again, his eyes fixed on the stars. He wondered if those stars still saw Earth the same way, or if they too now feared what slept beneath the surface. The captain stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the path ahead. The stars looked peaceful, but peace now felt like a thin cover stretched over something vast and hidden. He gave the order to set course for Central Command, not at full speed, not with force, but with caution. The ship turned slowly, leaving Earth's shadow behind below. In the forests that swallowed the ruins, the humans gathered, not in anger, not in chaos, but with stillness. Their faces held no signs of fear. Their voices barely rose above the wind. They had waited for generations, not for war, not for power, but for the moment. The stars remembered their name. The human who met the explorers stood near a hill where metal bones of an ancient tower still reached for the sky. He looked up, not with hope, not with hate, but with calm. He knew what was coming. He had seen it in their eyes. The crew that had landed by mistake, the ones who thought Earth was empty, they had left with truth in their hands, and that truth would now move like fire through dry grass. In the chambers deep below the Earth, machines began to shift. Old codes reawakened. Locked systems opened with soft hisses. Lights moved through stone halls, reflecting on walls that had not seen movement in years. Records unfolded, showing faces, names, moments, all locked away since the first silence. The past no longer stayed hidden. It walked now side by side with the present. Far from Earth, in the center of the galaxy, the High Council received the partial data sent by the captain, recordings of the ruined cities, voice patterns from the human message, heat scans of forests, breathing like lungs, and energy pulses from machines unknown to any race alive today. The council did not speak for long. They ordered silence, no further discussion, no public records, no alerts. They feared panic. They feared awakening something they could not stop. One elder among them stood and said, the old fire has not gone cold. It waits beneath the soil, and we fed it with lies, but secrets do not stay buried, not forever. Whispers moved through outposts. Small stations on the edge of known space began to share old stories. Again, tales of a world that turned its storms into weapons and made fear bow to will. Stories once called myths now returned with new voices. The ship carrying the crew returned to central space. Slowly, quietly, its logs handed to command. Its crew questioned, not with force, but with careful patience. None of them broke. None of them gave more than what was seen. None of them shared the deeper truth, the one hidden in the dark heart of Earth. Scientists who held the deep archive kept it sealed, locked in a system that responded only to his voice. When asked why he refused to upload it, he simply said, the galaxy is not ready to see itself through the eyes of Earth. On a quiet station, far from the center, a small message arrived. It was not sent through official lines, not encrypted, just a short line written common code. It said, "We are awake." The message spread without effort, picked up by scavengers, pirates, wanderers, traders. It moved like a ghost through every system, touching every edge of the Podvala galaxy, until one day someone answered, not with words, but with a ship, a single vessel built not by humans, not by any known race, a hybrid of old tech and new scars. Born in a scrapyard, forged in silence, it approached Earth without signals, without flags, no warnings, no weapons. As it entered orbit, the skies over Earth changed, the clouds formed shapes that matched nothing from nature. They spiraled around the vessel, as if judging it, weighing its purpose. The ship hovered for hours, then turned slowly and vanished into the void it left behind. A single piece of metal, shaped like a leaf falling from the stars. The humans retrieved it. Without fear, without rush, they placed it in the heart of the underground city and watched as it dissolved into light lines of code. Spread through the old systems, not a threat, not a weapon, just a message: we remember you. Across the galaxy, things began to shift. Alliances once strong grew quiet. Planets, long silent, began to prepare, not for war, but for something they could not name. Stations, once filled with pride, now checked their defenses more often, watched their skies more closely. And on Earth the humans walked with steady feet through forests and ruins, through tunnels and when they no longer waited, they moved with purpose, with balance. Not to conquer, not to rise, but to return. The final image, seen from orbit, was of Earth covered in storms that danced like flame, forests that moved like breath, oceans that glowed from below, and towers rising once more, not made of steel but of memory. The myth of Earth was broken. The silence was gone. The fire was awake. Only one Deathworld existed in the galaxy, or so they believed now. They knew there were two. Earth was not just a world, it was a message, and that message had only just begun. The end.